Hello, hi, welcome.
Morning.
We're nice and organised. We've got our tea, coffee. Hope you're organised too. Organised more than us is always good. Welcome to everybody joining us today. Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to say I'm really sorry to everybody that tried to type into that chat box this time last week and couldn't. we didn't realise YouTube had a blip and did some default settings behind our back without telling us, and it completely wiped everybody's ability to type. So sorry if you were here last week and couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're really glad it's working now. So we were sat here thinking, God, it's a bit quiet. Like, there's normally at least one person that says hello.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad it's all good. Do you want to introduce what we're doing? Or
Today is all about time, and I think that it's going to be a little bit of a mind stretch.
I hope we've got enough time to talk about it.
Enough time. Oh, that was
really bad.
That was a bad pun.
All
right.
Okay, for anyone, it's gone dark. It's okay. This will come out. For anyone is joining us for the first time, what we're doing is each week we've challenged ourselves to come on live and discuss a chapter of the primer of the Zeta Race, the book, which is normally here, and I would wave. I haven't got it, but you will know what the primer looks like from the other videos. Hello to everybody saying hello. We can all see you. Thank you. We're doing chapter 7 today. In the previous 2 videos, we've done up to chapter 7. So if this is the first time joining, if you go onto the channel, you'll see the other 2. So the idea is that you grab your free copy of the book, which has always been free. You can download it as a PDF document from our website, and the information for that is in the website blurb down there somewhere, wherever it is. It downloads as a PDF, and the idea is that during the week we read the chapter. And then we get together now and we discuss it and we type questions if the YouTube settings are playing nicely, which they are today. So we're going to talk about chapter 7, hopefully expand upon that. And then as we're going along, if you guys want to type questions, ask us to explain it a bit more if you need more.
Capitals.
But in capitals, because you can see how you're all typing now from here. It's really difficult to pick out a question. So if you have a question, just type your question all in caps lock. And if you're just saying hi and commenting, then just carry on as you are. And that's great. Phew, that's housekeeping. All good?
Yes.
All right. Okay. I'm going to get comfortable. Chapter 7 then is all about time. And I have put together some questions for Paul. And we're going to get him to answer them. You ready?
Well, we're going to have a go at it.
We're going to see what we can do. Oh, we froze. Okay, so the information in the book, of course, is straight from the Zetas. And so this is our interpretation of the information they've given us. So the Zetas have no functions related to time. So how do they manage their day? How do they organize their day? They've got no clocks, no watches, no sun up, no sun down, no seasons, nothing. How do they do that?
Humans developed time as a method to understand their day, and it actually works quite well for humans. But the Zetas, because they don't use time the same way that humans do, what they do is they use what's called an amplification of consciousness. And so when something's about to take place for the Zetas, then what happens is that there'll be an increase in consciousness as well.
Okay, so I'm going to draw reference to something we talk about quite a lot when people are working with spirits. And for anyone who's been in our mediumship classes, in whatever guise that takes, we talk about the importance of an induction process. And the induction process although it's for us to psychologically prepare ourselves to work with spirit people, it's also a way for the spirit people to recognize that we're about to sit, because like the Zetas, they also operate with no time if they want to. And so, because of course that's optional for them. And so in the process of doing simple things like, say you were going to sit for trance mediumship and you turn your light off and you shut your curtains and you sit down in the same spot. As you do that, the energy starts ramping up. Your intention is linked to all these different actions. And as your actions, as you perform the different actions, the energy goes up. And I guess that's what they're hooking into. That's what they're feeling
on some level, yeah. But we'll clarify stuff as we go along.
Yeah,
because
cool.
time isn't. When I'm going to give an explanation in probably a couple of minutes about time, but I'm going to use a device to show you what that means. And when you see this, you're going to have a different understanding of time. All right.
Okie dokie. The Zetas have said to look to your higher self to understand a no-time existence or the no-time phenomena.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Well, your higher self doesn't use time at all. It just exists as an observer in your reference, your frame of reference. Higher self also is managing all of the existences across all of your infinite timelines as well. And this is why quite often people will experience deja vu, but will also experience past lives as well while they're living. Okay. It'll seem like a past life, but we can talk about that in the future.
So how does that refer to higher self though? Like,
well, what's the
connection?
Higher self doesn't use time because time is irrelevant to consciousness.
Okay. So do you think if someone connects to their higher self that they're able to experience that kind of timeless?
Yes. Yes. If you can truly connect to your higher self, then you'll have a capacity to understand on some level your existences. But I'll give you an example. Because your mind is a construct and it's used for filtering what's going on around you and you interacting with reality, the higher self is basically the external consciousness around you that monitors and observes everything you do. When you try to connect to higher self, you only may connect to the outer portion of higher self. And so people think, oh, I've got contact with higher self. The problem with actually accessing the whole of higher self is the construct is no longer required. And so higher self would then step forward and either make a decision about existing, what type of existence would take place. That's a really complicated discussion.
That's a session all on itself, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So going back to the Zetas and how they experience timelessness, have I made a word up?
I think so. You could have,
how would the Zeta children, for instance, how would they know when to attend a lesson?
Yep. Well, how do you know when you're walking towards an oven that it's turned on? Because you feel the heat coming from the oven, right? As you get closer and closer to it, or you even go to put your hand towards it, you'll feel the heat coming from it. For the Zeta children, the way that they're able to understand that something's about to take place is there's an amplification of the presence of the requirement to be somewhere. I'll give you an example that was in the primer. The Zetas were asked, how do two craft know that they are to meet somewhere? And the Zetas said, think about magnets. And magnets have no pull when they're apart from each other. But as they get closer and closer, if they're correct, they'll suddenly snap together. But there would have been before that a small residual magnetic pull. And then as it gets closer, it gets stronger and stronger. And so from their perspective, if there is a requirement through telepathic communication to be somewhere, they'll understand through the amplification of that consciousness at what point they are to meet as well. Now, I did say this was going to be confusing.
the amplification, is that something they can enhance
Yep.
with technology?
Absolutely. Well, yes, but we'll get into that later.
Okay.
Because we don't want to jump ahead.
All right. How do I make sure that we come back to that? Because I'm really interested in
there
that.
could be a question in the future about that.
Okay. All right.
There
then.
you go. The future, which is now.
All right. So I was literally about to ask you how two craft come together. How two craft can come together. You already answered that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do the Zetas know when to turn up here, like when you're doing a sitting?
Yeah. So how do they know when I want to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't just ring the doorbell or something. What I do is I have what's called an induction method, and an induction method means that I have a process that I have to go through so that I can move into altered states. Those altered states are once again an amplification of an intention, and the intention then means that the Zetas will come. Now, that also works with spirit people. So your intention may be that you are going to connect to your guide. If you understand what induction methods are and how they work correctly, then you will get a level of contact with your guides as well. We teach this on our Moodle educational site, but there is a lot to induction, and the more people understand about it, the closer they can get to their guides.
It's quite interesting, this whole amplification of energy that's related to action, because I mean I don't know, I can't remember how many, is it light years away
About 39.
The Zeta Reticulum is.
Yeah.
From here to there.
Yeah.
But so what we're saying, or what you're saying, or what they're saying, is that actions you perform, how many? 39
light years.
Light years.
Traveling
away.
at the speed of light, it will take 39 years for light to reach here. But of course, thought has no speed limit. There is no limitation to thought, and so thought can cross boundaries infinitely faster than the speed of light. It's instantaneous. So because of the quantum field.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they are able to pick up on the energy of that from all that distance away.
They're able to pick up on the amplification of the intention of the thought.
Yeah. It's crazy town, isn't it? Like that. I mean, when you kind of actually stop and think about the distance involved in that. I mean, everyone knows the words, don't they? Consciousness knows no boundary.
Yeah.
Thoughts are powerful and all of this. But when you actually have this kind of approximate distance from A to B, and we know that they come, and they generally don't ever let us down in public sittings and things when you're working.
Yeah.
That it's a real demonstration of those words. Anyway, that's just my little ping light bulb moment.
Light bulb moment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So they've talked about lower and higher levels of communication in reference to higher levels of telepathy.
Yeah.
Can you explain what they're talking about there?
It's like an exam paper. Some questions will be weighted more than other questions, and they're worth more. And so for a level of consciousness, it will be weighted more depending on who was the one who had the thought, what was the actions required to produce. I'll give you an example. If someone was was required to work in the craft facility, at that point, they would be contacted telepathically to do so. But in their mind, they could be saying, I need to, back to them, I need to eat or have some liquid. The weight of the telepathic communication would determine what the action that being would take.
So say they were being called by 3 different people to do something.
It's weighted.
It's weighted.
Yeah.
And so would that also explain how they would manage the children as well, who are learning these processes? Do you think they'd you see this? Do you think there'd be some kind of correlation in what you just said to how they manage like a class? Okay, so when they're teaching, it's one teacher for
it can be
hundreds of thousands of children,
yeah.
right? So do you think that there's a process, a similar process that they're using in that lesson environment to manage all of those thoughts?
Yeah, there is absolutely thought management.
Yeah,
There has to be.
yeah. Otherwise, it would be crazy loud the whole time.
Christopher has a question. Do they have anything that resembles a TV set to watch or books to read? No, there are no TV sets, but I know what they do have. They have monitors, and the monitors are AI-driven technology that advise them of what resource usage that will be available to them today as an individual entity. And that then relates to the amount of liquid minerals that they can have. And this means that they live in harmony with any specific planet or craft that they are on today. It's like you have a field full of vegetables that you're growing. You could eat them all in 1 week and have nothing for the rest of the year, but you wouldn't last very long. Or you can stagger the production of the food and make sure that there's food across the whole year. That's why they use that technology as well. Do they have books to read? They don't have books to read. They have multi-dimensional symbols, and those symbols combined to create knowledge.
Are those symbols are they like accessible, like you could walk up to one, like you could walk up to a book, or would they be accessed via the collective consciousness?
No, that's two different things. So it may be that you need an instruction manual, to use a human term, for a craft. There will be a whole lot of geometric shapes that, when placed and moved around each other, will create an outcome, and the outcome will be the information that's required.
It's very interesting. Questions. I think I can see a question.
Can they read the collective? Oh, sorry.
There's a question above. Don't forget capital letters.
You must type in capital letters.
It's really hard for us to see.
Are spacecraft grown or made? They're actually both. So there'll be embryonic processes that are created to create the biological matter, and then what will happen is that as humans do as well, there'll be a skeletal structure that will be placed for the biological matter to attend to it. Once it has grown over the skeletal process, then they can embed into the skeleton of the craft the specific technologies that are required, remembering that the biological entity also has consciousness. Yeah.
And Tricia,
can they read the collective? That question probably, I think the question's wrong. That's the problem. You can't read a collective. There's levels of access to consciousness. It's like saying, could you read the telephone book in 1 split second? You could if you were capable of doing that as an AI or an inanimate animate, but definitely it's not possible to read a collective.
I'm not going to try.
No.
Okay. Hey, don't worry about the no caps. It's just my eyesight's really bad, and the writing is like tiny on our like chat box here, so capital letters just makes it easier for us to see.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any last questions about what we've talked about so far before we move on to the next?
Well, Trish just says, so not like the Akashic records. I mean, who can read the Akashic records, really? and who has complete access to the Akashic records? Can you read everything in the Akashic records? And so there's all these questions based around that as well. John says, I asked a question and you missed it.
Ooh.
Did we, John? Do you want to read?
Oh, hang on. We're on top chat. We need to change that to all.
Hang
hang
on.
on.
We've got a technical glitch.
We've messed up now. Live chat. Okay.
Okay, wait a minute. We'll just scroll up.
Oh my God. Okay. We've got like 400 times the amount of
information.
Sorry if you've been typing, we've not spotted it.
Where's John's question though?
I don't know. I'm just looking for capital letters at this point.
John says, yay, I can type.
Which is good because nobody could type last week. Okay. Oh no, that's Christopher. John, can you repost your question? It might be easier.
I would suggest that you just retype your question. But while you are doing that, why are the Greys so prominent with Earthlings more so than other races? I would suggest that they're actually not. And the problem is that this is a big question, probably for a different time, but I would suggest that other races are actually holographically presenting themselves as Greys so that they can hide behind their activities as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Isn't it amazing that just about every person has been visited by Greys, really? Whereas we know that there's all these other beings out there and even spirits that present as other beings as well.
Yeah.
So that's a very good question. All right.
Sure is.
Okay, so are we going to, we can wait for John's question.
There's a question from Dr. Melody Barton. Hello. Nice to have you with us.
Are you getting input from the Zetas? Yes, I am, Melanie. As the questions are being asked, I can access the information that's required. John said, I just typed it again. We can't see it. But we can see you typing, saying, we can see you typing. It may be that there's a bit of a lag.
Could be a lag, but then we wouldn't see that.
So we can see, I just typed it again, but we can't actually see the question. I can see, I asked a question and you missed it, please.
How bizarre.
So your questions aren't actually coming up for some reason.
That's really peculiar. John, put them in the Messenger, the Facebook group for the Zeta Connection, and I will see if I'll pick them up there. Okay, so I'm literally looking at it now.
Facebook.
Don't we love Facebook?
Someone else is saying, Jan says, John, I can't see your question either. Okay, it's interesting. Okay, that's very interesting. Put them. Yeah, do that. Okay, so now I have a short demonstration, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have got the group open on my phone. If you are in that group and you're not getting your questions come up on here, type them in the group, which you can access through Messenger. Facebook, blah blah blah, and I'll get them.
Yeah. All right. So here we go, and I'm sure that if this doesn't generate some questions, then everything's going to be fantastic. All right. So I've got what's called a plasma ball here, and a plasma ball is a beautiful light show that you can have, and people, use them just as a decoration. But the Zetas use these as an explanation of time, and so I'm going to do that now. Let's pretend that you don't exist yet, but you only exist in spirit realm, but you don't exist in the physical. That's where this comes into it. So it's got batteries in it, and the batteries or the charge could be considered the higher self. So what happens is when I turn this on, it creates a stream. Now that would be considered to be the fact that you've now been born, okay? And you are the central mechanism within the sphere. The higher self, through that central mechanism, is existing on all these different threads of time, experiencing life as different people. Of course, they're all traveling at different speeds. They're all traveling across each other. So when they touch each other, that could be considered two timelines coming across each other and you experiencing deja vu. Also, this is an asynchronous environment, which means that they're not all growing at the same time and they're not all failing at the same time. Some, as they come across and down, finish, others are born. And so the Zetas say that if you can imagine time as this type of process, and that you are your higher self, who is your primary consciousness across timelines, is now managing all of the different lives that you hold. And so when people say that they have access to higher self, the reality is you would have to have access to all of your information across all of your timelines. And next week's YouTube that we're going to do is about timelines and information about timelines as well. Now, as the batteries start to fail, what will happen is there'll be less and less threads. Okay. And an example of this is if I put my finger on it, you'll see that there's really only one or two threads left. When finally the last person, the last me, the last you exists on the timeline, you return back to where you came previous to your incarnation. Okay. And of course, the thing is with these, they have an EMF field around them. And so you can interact with them, just so that you know that. Okay. So if that didn't generate any questions, we can finish right now. But no, that's not true. All right.
All right. So I know we're going to mainly deal with timelines next week, but we do have a couple of questions about timelines now, relating back to the Zetas. So if the Zetas don't define past because they don't abide by a linear time framework,
Right.
how do they experience or recollect past events? Do you see what I mean? Like we always say, oh, we look back on this, or we think back to that moment. What's their process?
So the Zetas understand, once again we use this, that they are the central point to these threads, these existences. So for them, they're able to, using consciousness, reanimate or invest in that now part of any specific memory that may have been had, or any specific time that had been had as well.
They reanimate. So what are you saying there?
Well, let's say that, okay, reanimation. So let's say that you had breakfast this morning and you wanted to go back to breakfast this morning. You would, if you're understand that you actually exist in consciousness, then you can reanimate that point in time and step into it, which would then become the now.
So you're saying reanimation of that moment is different to reliving it or re-experiencing it?
Yes, it is, because you have to recreate it. Like when you got up and then made yourself breakfast, you were actually in that moment. You were animating that moment. You are animated in the moment. Once you transition past breakfast, if you want to go back to that, you have to reanimate that.
So having said that, then the Zetas can travel back back in time, right?
Yeah. But remember, time is not the
illusion,
time
really.
that you understand. Time is as they understand it to be, like this. And so from their perspective, they're not on a linear time length where you're trying to bounce back. All they're doing is just reanimating the thread.
They must have, okay, so to be able to do that, you must have some sort of anchor point in the current now, right?
So the anchor point now is the probe in the middle, which is the higher self. This is the difference between actually understanding what having access to your higher self is and not having access to your higher self. If you are to move from this timeline that we are on now to the next or the associated timeline, you'll find that everybody's personalities will be different. You'll also understand that because of your vibratory nature, you'll be in possibly the same type of physical body that looks the same, but you'll be out of sync. And so you won't be in harmony with that environment. And what will happen is, as you start to vibrate and go out of sync, your environment will heat up and you won't be able to stay in there. When people talk about moving from one timeline to the next, what happens is they don't, it may be just for a very small amount of time, like a second, but if you stay in there, the maximum that you can stay on a secondary timeline is 72 hours.
There's a question there.
If you're an observer of the reanimate, wouldn't that change it? No, because you were the one that actually animated the reanimation.
What if you
There's a difference between.
So what if you could go back to somebody else's?
Wait for a second. Yeah, but now there's too many questions. So
sorry.
Remember that the Zetas take copies of timelines and put them into synthetic quantum environments. Okay. The reason they take the copy is because when you observe the linear timeline structure that humans have, because you believe it's linear, then they can use that process. When they observe it within an infinite split second, they have to take a snapshot of all of the observations of now to work out what will be possibly, hypothetically, take place on a timeline. But they don't consider time for themselves to be the same as the way that humans do. And so it's a completely different construct and thought process. And I actually don't know if the human mind is capable of understanding that whole phenomenon.
What do you think it is when you're doing whatever you're doing and you're thinking, God, I really must phone person A, and then person A
It's synchronicity,
calls.
yeah.
You'd suggest that a synchronicity rather than some process similar to what the Zetas are describing as the call to do something.
You exist in all facets of consciousness across a quantum field. When you have a thought about somebody, that thought instantaneously travels to them. And like, I'm not a quantum physicist by any means, but my understanding is that when one changes, the other one can be complete distance away. And what happens is they swap, right? And so that's what can happen with thought as well. Okay. Yeah, this is very complicated, isn't it?
It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah. Christopher says, "Are the Zetas psychic?" Well, ask yourself, what is psychic?
What is psychic?
If you understand that you are a spirit person, and that spirit person is able to access a lot of that information, then what takes place is that's what humans class as psychic.
Okay. Question here. Why do the Zetas always want us to have a ticking clock in our sittings?
Yeah. The Zetas want us to have a ticking clock, and it won't work for anybody else, so try it if you want. But is because that's what they chose to gauge the difference by.
And what do you?
It's like a pulse. It's like a pulse.
Why do they need a pulse? What's that all about?
Because when they send through streaming of words, streaming of information, it needs to align within our three-dimensional environment, which is a specific frequency.
And what is the Zeta's explanation of deja vu?
That just as with the plasma ball, as the streams come around, sometimes they cross over or move next to each other. And in doing so, because you're in an asynchronous environment, you may come through, pick up information from yourself on another timeline.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I've got John's question.
Good.
I don't know why it wasn't showing up there. Okay. Have you ever felt urgency to be somewhere and not really understood what that meant, like you're being summoned?
Yeah. So
You said when you were younger and inexperienced and learning. You said learning the ropes, John. I'm guessing you mean learning to communicate with the Zeta. I can relate to what he's saying.
Like
the need to sit, the need to start meditating.
Yeah. So that's your intuition. So your intuition is the link between your construct and your higher self. And as you build your intuition, it's like a conduit. It could start off small, but as your intuition builds, it becomes a larger conduit between your construct, your mind, and your higher self. And there can be times when you're like, okay, I really feel I need to do something right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I've got another random question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
It's about hybrids. Is that okay? Do you want that now?
Go for it.
Have hybrids always existed as they currently do in the human race, or is this a relatively new development?
The hybridization, and not the way that people believe humans are being hybridized, because that's actually not happening. But the journey for beings to incarnate as humans really began in earnest about 70 years ago.
Yeah, 3-4 generations ago. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a question there. Please use capitals. We can't read. What are your thoughts about?
Nothing. I don't watch that network, so I have no idea.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't watch any of it. All right. So I think the next thing that we were going to go on to was
time relation, screen memories.
Screen memories.
How time relates to screen memories.
Yeah. So I've got some stuff here. So basically what we want to talk about is time, but missing time, right? But to do that, we need to frame the conversation, okay? So basically, Cyan and I have worked out that there's multiple types of screen memories, and we've done videos on that on our channel as well.
Yeah, you can go watch them.
And you can watch them. But just quickly, a type A screen memory is used to obliterate any memory of contact. Yep, and that's called missing time. Type B screen memories are a narrative that you believe. You're flying a craft, you're holding a baby, you're doing something. So that's a narrative. And whether people tell you it exists or not, you believe that it happened.
Yeah, you won't know the difference. Yeah. It feels real.
The Class C memories are created to support the local mind or your mind in contact situations. You may not remember something, but they have a time release mechanism on them, and 10 or 20 years later, all of a sudden you remember, oh, I had contact and I've been getting visited and all the rest of it. Class D is a difficult one to describe, but a Class D screen memory is when a hybrid extraterrestrial human is trained by their own race and work with what are called synthetic quantum environments. And so we won't really be talking about that one because that's pretty complicated as well. And then Class E is what's called the construct. And the construct, they're not specifically a screen memory at all, but they're what are called a rotational experience. If I could explain this, and maybe you could have a go at it as well. You may be walking into a room. You walk into the room, you talk to somebody, and next thing you find yourself back at the doorway and you have not yet entered the room.
Yeah.
That's because you have now identified that you're in a construct. People go, whoa, not probably heard of that before, but give your explanation about the cat.
Oh, yeah. So about 15 years ago, I was just sat in a park with a coffee.
Coffee.
Just relaxing, nice sunny day. And there's some tennis courts about, I don't know, 20, 30 foot in front of me. And luckily no one was playing, so there was no bang, bang, bang of balls. But anyway, I noticed a black cat at the corner to my right. Love black cats, used to have one. Of course, I'm going to notice the black cat. Black cat walks across the tennis court fence. He just follows the fence line along, which was up on a slightly elevated area, so very easy to spot. And he walked along for, I don't know, 20, 30 meters, right? And then in a split second, this cat was back at the beginning, like, and I was just like, okay.
Yeah. It's like some glitch in the Matrix.
This is literally like the Matrix. What's going on? I was developing as a physical medium at that point, and so I had lots of weird stuff going on around me, quite a lot. And so I just put it down to one of those things, and didn't really think too much more about it, but never forgotten it, because it was black cat, then black cat again.
Yeah.
You just don't forget stuff like that. So that's my time glitch experience.
Well, a construct can also be that you're sitting somewhere and you see, say you're looking at the table and you see the table bend as a wave and it moves through as a wave. That's also a construct. That means you're sitting inside a construct. Constructs are used as a teaching environment. Now, we actually wanted to get a proper explanation of missing time, right?
Yeah.
And also being in a construct. So mixing screen memory A, missing time, with screen memory E to see if we could get that. And we just talking about it, but we didn't ask the Zetas about it. And then this is what happened. It was afternoon, decided to have a nap.
As we do.
Woke up, power nap, and looked at the clock, and it was 4 o'clock.
An hour had gone
and
by.
An hour had gone by, and I'm thinking, that's not possible. I only sleep for like 5 minutes, And so I picked the clock up and looked at it and said, here, what time is it? 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Okay, got back up again, turned around, looked at the clock and said 4 o'clock. Okay. Stepped outside of the room into another room, walked over, and that clock said 3:05. Now, we'd only walked into the room at 3, and all the other clocks in the house said 3:05.
Yeah.
Walked back into the room.
Yeah.
Where I was asleep previously, looked at the clock, it now said 3:05. We both looked at the clock previous to walking out of the room 3 times, and it said that it was 4 o'clock. We were told by the Zetas that they had given us an example of what it's like to be in a construct for 1 hour, but it only in human time. Well, it was an hour in human time, but on the timeline, it was 5 minutes maximum.
Yeah, absolutely amazing demonstration of how they can place you inside an environment.
Yeah.
And your life can just continue on. You've got absolutely no idea anything's amiss until you're back out of that environment. And the cat's the opposite. I believe, and I haven't checked with them, but we're fairly confident that these time glitches are your consciousness is somewhere else. Now, whether you've been physically taken somewhere else and put back at the beginning, or if your consciousness is separated and maybe your hybrid, your extraterrestrial portion of your consciousness is elsewhere, we don't have the specific answers yet. But this whole time glitch stuff is really common. It's just as common for contactees as the Class A screen memories, complete missing time. Maybe you're driving to work, you turn up to work on time, but there's like an inordinate amount of petrol missing or something crazy.
Or the mileage.
The mileage shows really, really badly wrong or whatever. You know, it's all related, and we're just kind of starting to unpick all of this information with them.
A lot of this stuff can actually be done with remote viewing.
Mm.
You can remote view anything: the past, the present, the future, astral, anything. And if you learn about targeting and ideograms, and you learn about staging of targeting as well, it's really, really interesting what you can look at. So when the Zetas talk about the reanimation of being on a specific in a specific instance of a now, remote viewing only comes slightly close to that, but you're still able to remote view a specific scene if you train yourself to do that as well.
Which is what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, that's right.
Very interesting.
Quite interesting.
There's a question there. I can't quite read it.
I've had a craft flyby, says Star FX, but sometimes I'm frustrated because I don't know what that means. Well, the first thing is we need to understand that we're in a phenomenon. So it could be that we look up and we see a craft, and it's because, one, the first explanation is that we created the craft. And so it's just like a fabric, a mirror, it's reflecting back to us what we think. Now, that's the first one. The next one is that somebody else has seen a craft, but for that moment, you're in a distortion and you're looking through into the astral fabric and you're seeing the craft in the astral as well. And the Zetas have told us that the astral and the physical are blended quite tightly. The other thing is, of course, the next one is that it's actually a craft, and it's just a craft from a race, just going from point A to point B. Next one is that it's actually a craft from a race that you belong to, and they've come to just observe you and other nodes on the planet. They don't just come for one person, they come for millions of people. And the technology that they have is they're able to stream the information from the nodes, and we talked about this in one of the spheres around the planet discussions. And in doing so, they're able to support the ever-increasing consciousness of the human race, and they're able to provide a level of control for hybrids as well, and those hybrids are able to learn outside of the normal construct of the human framework as well. Yeah. There you go. All right.
Could be multiple different things.
So I think that's it.
Yeah, we're coming to an end for this session. If there are any last questions, get them in now.
Just to let you know, we've started another channel on YouTube called The Spirits Channel. And it's going to be all about spirit realm, spirits, contacting spirits, working with contacting guides. It's going to answer lots and lots of questions, because as mediums, we're often working in spirit realm as well.
I have a question that's come in through Facebook. On the